Chapter 3. Mental health awareness.
Especially in New Zealand, I think it's a long game. And I think for the world, it is a long game. You know, like you can't change these kind of mindsets overnight. But I think what we're trying to focus on a lot is breaking the stigma. You know, we're trying to break people's thinking processes first. Because I feel like when we break people's thinking processes, we can eventually make change.
Talking about mental health is already an incredibly challenging and tricky subject. Things like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, they all exist and they aren't going anywhere, yet we still seem to struggle to talk about it. In some communities where mental health is outright rejected for the most part, like my community, the South Asian communities, it can be an insurmountable uphill battle to even begin to challenge the social pressures and norms that contribute to dwindling mental health. The pandemic has definitely brought to light the importance of taking good care of our mental health, but my guest today has been working tirelessly for years to address the systemic issues that affect mental health. New Zealand-based photographer and videographer Nayel Sushil uses his talents in digital media and dance to broadcast ways people can take personal accountability in their communities. He addresses the stigma against mental health in New Zealand, battling the negative stereotypes that are associated with minorities from lower-income neighborhoods, and spreading the Be a Wolf message, a campaign he began to inspire members of his community to be the best versions of themselves possible. He's a change maker and has been featured in national news for bringing positivity during the lockdown, and has created his own initiative, the Check-In Collection, to address the rising rates of suicide in New Zealand. I'm really excited for you guys to hear what he has to say, so let's get started.
So it's a pleasure to be here, firstly. My name is Nayzel Sushil. I am from New Zealand. I am a content creator. I don't really like being called a content creator, though. I call myself a change maker, not an influencer. And there's a reason behind this. And in terms of the languaging, I really put out on pretty much all my social platforms. But I think the best way to describe me is I do a lot of things in a day. So it's quite funny to say. So I take photos. I'm a wedding photographer. I make content for local businesses so they can grow a little bit faster in terms of marketing and things like that in my community. So that's a couple of things that I focus on the daily. I also work for the biggest job board in Australia and New Zealand. It's called seek.co.nz. They literally own every job board in South America and America as well. Some of the job boards in America, and they've got shares in that. So, work for them as marketing and content as well. So that's pretty much my 9 to 5 grind. And then the passion is photo content for Feature New Zealand. And I also make clothing for mental health purposes, which is also called the Check-In Collection and things like that. So I do a lot of things in one day. So it's pretty hard to sort of nail it down in one sort of paragraph. So that's me. That's a little bit of me. There's another side, but that's most of me.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, you did mention, is it the Check-In Collection or the Check-In Collective?
It's the Check-In Collection. It's the Check-In Collection. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the thing that I wanted to talk about today. So the Check-In Collection is like it's a campaign that you started, right, for mental health awareness. It's specifically in New Zealand. So what kind of inspired you, and what exactly is the Check-In Collection, and what inspired you to start that? Yeah,
the Check-In Collection it's a pretty simple movement where we're trying to inspire people to wear a shirt, any colorful checkered shirt. You don't even have to buy a checkered shirt off us. But if you wear a checkered shirt on that day, it's your responsibility to check in on your mates and check in on their mental health or how they're doing. Because it's a simple thing, but I think because we get so busy in our daily lives that we forget how important it is to check in on each other, especially with everything going on at the moment, like COVID-19, people being in self-isolations, things like that. So right now I thought was the perfect time to launch something like this, especially in New Zealand. Now, what inspired it is, if you didn't already know, New Zealand on average has the highest suicide rates in the world.
Oh, right? Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
On population count. So
Okay.
the highest teen suicide rates in the world as well. So between kids aged between, I think it's like 12 years to 25 years, we're actually one of the highest in the bracket, and when it comes to teenagers killing themselves. So it's really, really bad. So last year, in the last 12 months, 685 people on average committed suicide in New Zealand, and 68% were men. So the main purpose of this is overall focused on men's mental health as well as overall mental health, but it has a huge focus on men opening up about their feelings and talking to their friends about it. So it's more in a setup to keep people accountable, pretty much, and give them inspire them to make sure if they wear a checkered shirt, they check in on their mate. So it's that's pretty much most of it. Yeah.
So you talked about it being I obviously like the overall like mental health and stuff, but specifically like men's mental health. So we know that, you know, like there is a resistance when it comes to like talking about mental health, especially when it comes to like especially the patriarchy in general, right? And like being masculine, you have to be strong, you have to be like outwardly, you know, just like it's frowned upon, I guess, to cry or things like that, or show vulnerability in any capacity. Yeah. So why or how is it that you're going about combating this like cultural norm of dealing with mental health, especially when it comes to men's mental health?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I think this, especially in New Zealand, I think it's a long game. And I think for the world, it is a long game. You know, like you can't change these kind of mindsets overnight. But I think what we're trying to focus on a lot is breaking the stigma. You know, we're trying to break people's thinking processes first, because I feel like when we break people's thinking processes, we can eventually make change. But the only way you can do that is if we give real life examples. So if people don't come forward and have the courage to give real life examples, then people will never be able to relate. So if that's why I feel like I feel like I have to take purpose and responsibility every day to come forward and be vulnerable so other people can follow. So I think it's all about setting examples and being really good role models, especially with this type of topic, because it's super sensitive and it's really, really hard for people to come forward because they feel like they're going to be judged, especially in the environment that we're living in. You know, like social media is such a huge impact now on mental health as well, because people see this world where look at the highlight reels, but no one ever talks about the bad stuff, you know? But I truly believe that the next sort of generation that comes after us, this highlight reel is going to change into a real reel, because the only way we can make it now is if you are truly your full self. You know, I talk about this a lot with people in my community. You know, I talk about the greatest gift you can give to the world is when you realize for you to be yourself, you know? And suddenly, if you keep that kind of mindset, you know, and I feel like we can eventually change the system and then inspire the people and eventually break the stigma for mental health, especially men's mental health, which is huge.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I am all about like just community outreach and like conversations. I feel like that's the way that you start change, honestly, is just talking about it. So you mentioned that New Zealand has like the high, I'm actually very surprised at this statistic, just because like you never really hear anything bad about New Zealand ever.
It's crazy though. Even New Zealand, this kind of stat never gets advertised. You know, you really have to dig deep to get to these stats. They talked about this in a lot last year before like this whole coronavirus stuff happened. But there's a really, really bad stat coming because of coronavirus, even in the 6 weeks that New Zealand was in lockdown, which should come out in a couple of weeks, hopefully. And if I'll send you some details on it, but I don't know the exact numbers, but I did hear that it's looking pretty bad as well. You know, so imagine if it's this bad in New Zealand, how bad it could be for the rest of the world that's been in lockdown for a longer period of time. You know? Do
you think that the lockdown has had a drastic change in the impacts of mental health for New Zealanders as a whole?
I think so, because considering we weren't in lockdown for only like 4 or 5 weeks, but for some people, like, I feel like just because it was a problem that young people were struggling with already in New Zealand, you know, especially with areas that I'm from, like South Auckland, you know, like low income areas where there isn't enough, you know, like funding in the right areas, or there's not enough outlets for young people to express themselves, you know. They always go into wrong directions, like gangs, and try to find belongings in wrong environments. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So when things like that aren't there, and then suddenly mental health is another thing you have to deal with, then we're looking at triple the problem. And then COVID, imagine that. We're looking at like 3 big problems in one hit, you know? So I think it's definitely a huge problem. I think it was a huge problem during lockdown in New Zealand, but we'll find out shortly when the numbers come out.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you lived in South Auckland. Is it also called the South Side?
It is also called the South Side. Yes. We're infamous. We're very infamous in South Auckland. So I'm currently doing a pretty big project at the moment. You know, like it's called Beowulf South Auckland, right? And the whole concept of this is literally we're trying to inspire people's mindsets so they have the confidence to change the system. Do you get what I mean? Because what I'm trying to do on the daily basis is I'm trying to break the system, because I'm not trying to change people's mindsets. I'm not trying to change people's opinions, because you will never be able to change the world if you try to change people's opinions. Every day I wake up and I try to change the system, because things like mental health, things like fighting for equality, things like even Black Lives Matter, all of these things all link up, because at the end of the day, all I'm fighting for every kid to feel like they've got equal opportunity to make it, you know? And I think that's something, especially in South Auckland, also other areas all around the world, like, you know, low income areas or in America and things like that. You probably know this already, you know? So these are some of the issues that gets talked about on the daily. And in South Auckland, it's not even a bad place, but it's because of the stereotype of it being a bad place. It gives people in the community no confidence or courage to make it, you know? Yeah. So I'm literally trying to inspire people so they have the confidence that, hey, you can make it out of South Auckland, no matter what the naysayers say, no matter what the haters say, no matter how much people bring you down, no matter what color skin tone you are, you know, doesn't matter who you are and what household you're from, you still have the opportunity to make it, you know. And I think that's the key message. And I think the key message is every day that I put across on this platform is love, you know. Like people forget that you get 2 opportunities in life, you know, like 2 options. You first have a choice, and then the second is love. In order to get to love, you have to make the choice, you know. And a lot of people forget that, you know, forget that concept. So I think every day, Be a Wolf's definitely a movement to inspire people to change the system, you know, because I can't change the system by myself.
Yeah, it's actually really funny. I have my roommate, actually, she's from Chicago, and they have a South Side there too. And it's the same thing that you say all the time. She's like, oh yeah, dude, I'm from the South Side, like whatever it is. And I just thought, like, it's so funny how it transcends like continents, just like different areas. But
it's crazy. It's crazy. It's so crazy that like like a name can get stereotyped with people, you know. That's literally what I'm trying to break down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that I am really intrigued to ask you actually is the fact it's not only that you're from New Zealand, but you're also like a Desi person from New Zealand. And for those listeners who don't know what Desi means, it's just basically people who have a South Asian background. So your family's from Fiji, but you guys are also ethnically Indian.
Yeah.
Right. And in Indian cultures, when it comes to combating cultural barriers, especially when it comes to mental health specifically, the typical answer is to just ignore it, or it's like something that is sort of like frowned upon, or something to be ashamed of when it comes to combating mental health. Have you found this to be an issue in your life specifically, or in your own personal experiences, and how have you combated that?
Yeah, 100%. Now, I think with this, you know, like we can't play like I think me personally thinking about how you combat it is is you can't blame anybody for this, because I think it's because, say, for example, I'll give you an example, like the way that our parents were growing up, they had influences that didn't really encourage it, so they're on a chain effect at the moment, so that's why I talk about it a lot, like talking about it and breaking out of comfort zones and having the courage to be disliked, because our generation, like our age group, because we're in the age group where we can actually break this, because when we have kids, we know that we're going to encourage them to talk up, because me and you, for example, were the ones that went through it, So when we have kids, they shouldn't be able to do it, because we should be able to break the cycle. That's why I feel like we're in a transition phase at the moment still. And I think even with my parents, growing up, things like that, they were super supportive. I was actually really lucky to grow up in a family that were super supportive, because my mum was Muslim and my dad was Christian, so I had the best of both worlds rather than just like one religion getting taught in the household. So I think that was a bit of a blessing, but I know a lot of friends and I know a lot of close people and a lot of family members that had to go through like pain and struggle because the impact of culture and religion had on their well-being, and their thinking process, because it doesn't give an individual the opportunity to become who they truly deserve to be, because they're influenced by other people's thinking processes. Especially, like, you can't really blame your parents too, because they were influenced by their parents, and then they were influenced by their parents. So there's no blame game. I'm not playing any type of blame game, but I think what we're at the moment, especially with like the kids in the 90s that were born in the 90s and the late 80s and then early 2000s, is like literally that phase of breaking the cycle. What do you think? Do you reckon that's on point, or?
I think that's a lot of pressure to put on 90 babies. Like, that's a lot of pressure.
It is 100%. But I think if we have more people talking about it, like more people doing what you're doing exactly right now, I think we should eventually make change, because it's literally all about breaking people's comfort zones. And if we break people's comfort zones in a positive way, not in a negative way, I think in the long run it will pay off for everybody.
Yeah. One thing that I find incredibly inspiring is that we don't have very many like brown people in the media advocating for things like mental health and mental health awareness and anti-bullying and things like that. And that's definitely been like at the forefront of all of the projects that you do, despite like, photography and videography being your main content. Like it's always that you post and that you produce, right? So how do you feel about, the rise of social media amplifying minority voices for one thing, but also like, how do you personally feel being a pioneer for the social welfare in a community that's for many generations has just ignored the reality of these issues, that these things still present to this day?
This is a really, really good question. I've been waiting for somebody to ask me this. This is really, really good. Now, I think, like, I'm going to be honest with you, right? So everything I do, like, this is going to sound really, really crazy, but everything I've ever done, say from when I've realized what I really, really want to do in life, right, is always focused on making impact, like even when I take photos for like businesses and things like that, I always try to connect a backstory to it, The reason I do this is because I'm going back to the vision and the world I want to see, because I don't want to see a kid go through the same pain that I went through, Every kid in South Auckland and that I see now, I see myself, I start to feel like why it sucks that this kid hasn't made it fast enough, why has it been, and I'm thinking about myself, I'm thinking, why did it take me so long to get to this level? Whereas other people got to this level faster. I'm not comparing, but I'm just saying equal opportunity is what I always is at the forefront that I'm fighting for, and I think with the color of my skin tone and, the ethnical background, there needs to be a lot more people talking about it. But what I really want to say is, like every message that I put out to the world, there's always a reason behind it. Even the work that I do for businesses, I never take work that doesn't align with my vision. You know, like if someone's like, shoot a campaign for smoking and drugs, I'll be like, no, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't align with my vision, which is to see the world become a better place, you know? So I pick and choose what kind of projects that I take on because it needs to align with the company vision. It needs to align with my vision in order for the world to change, you know? So everything that I do is in the forefront of making sure that it aligns with everything I do, which is inspiring people to live their dreams, you know?
I love that. Yeah. I love that you are at a place too that you're able to like pick and choose and just be like very selective on what it is that you want to present to the world. Because at the end of the day, that's what your name is on, right?
Exactly. And I think a lot of times people are like, you know, it's crazy. A lot of times people always like, you know, like it's all about the money game, you know, like it's chasing the money. But I think it takes a long time. It took me a long time, you know, like I'm glad I kind of realized at the age of 26 that what really matters in life, you know, and sometimes it takes people like 50, 60 years to realize what really matters, you know. And I think money is one thing that people is always thinking about, you know, like especially with work coming in, you know, like money's important. We need to make money to be sustainable. But it's crazy that money doesn't really matter. You know, it's about how people remember you matters, you know, like I say this line all the time, you know, like where I'm going to go down in the history books as the greatest ever, you know, and a lot of people never have the confidence to say this. And when I first started doing this, I got a lot of hate in my community. You know, I got a lot of people like hating because they're like, oh, why are you saying that? You know, why you're not being humble. You're being a smart ass, you know, like things like that, you know? So no one really got the concept, you know, and I think the concept behind it is whenever I say that I'm going to be the greatest ever, what I mean by that is I'm going to be the greatest version of myself every single day, you know? And when you're the greatest version of yourself every single day, even it's all good if you have an off day as long as you keep going, suddenly money doesn't matter anymore, you know? Suddenly, I just thought about this today, driving home before we got into this podcast, and I thought about it. You know, like you think it's success, okay? Like people talk about, you know, making it. You know, it's all about making it. You know, like making it in life, either success, money. It's all about making it. You know, like I hear that line, oh, I can't wait till I make it. You know, but you never make it unless you're happy.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's what I say every single time. What is making it? What is making it? What does that even mean?
I know.
What does that mean?
I know. What does it mean? What does it actually mean? I truly believe that if you're happy, even for a moment in life, I promise you've made it. That's me.
That tip of the day. World.
That is the tip of the day. That's crazy.
I love your tip of the day videos, actually. I just feel like I love how you start. It's your friendly neighborhood.
Favorite neighborhood hero. Now, because you know why I say that? There was a long time ago, I think when I was 21 or 22, someone told me that what you put to the world is what you are. You know, like I don't like the reason I say it is it's your character. You know, like if you think you're going to be poor forever, you are going to be poor forever. You know, if you think you're useless, you're always going to be useless forever. You know, like, and I think it's all about, that's why I'm a huge believer in mindset, you know, like the type of thinking process and the type of influence and the type of communications you have on the daily basis can have a huge impact on the type of person you become. And like think things like, you know, like your 5 of your best friends, things like that, you know, those type of conversations are like close to my heart every single day. And I think thinking about that consistently and just being aware of it really makes a huge difference, you know. So I think it's really just staying on top of it. And that's why every time, every video, every conversation I have that's that even people that don't know me, I'm always like, hey, my name's Nayzel versus Wild, your favorite neighborhood hero, you know? So it's the persona that I try to put to the world to make them believe that, hey, look, it's what you make it, you know? That's how you see the world.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what advice would you give to like a child growing up? Like, you know, wherever. Doesn't have to be South Auckland, doesn't have to be anywhere, but like just like someone that you can see. I guess it's two parts to this question, but like the advice that you would give to someone that you can see that's very obviously struggling with some sort of like mental health issue, right? Because I know that you've also personally have stated before that you've had to deal with certain things throughout your life. And the advice that you would give to a person that is maybe dealing with negative stereotypes, you know, difficulty with mental health, as well as to a person, the advice you would give to a family or a friend that has someone that is dealing with these issues and how they would go about handling these issues. I know you're not a medical health expert by any means, but just like as a community, like how would they go about addressing these?
Yeah, 100%. Now, you know, with mental health, because it's such a complex issue, you know, and it's really different for everybody. So, but if there's any advice that I can give, you know, for even a kid that's growing up with it or, you know, like falls into it, is I really, really want, every time someone talks to me about it as well, the first thing that I talk about is your environment, you know, and people forget the environment, the impact of environment on your mind. You know, when I say environment, is the space you wake up in, you know, the space you go to work, you know, like the space in your car, you know, and the space of the people that you let into your space, you know. And I think if you focus your energy on your environment, I promise you, you will break through. You know, no matter how hard the situation is, no matter how hard it feels in your mind, you will break through. Now, let's dive deeper on this. Now, the reason I talk about environment is because people don't realize, okay, this is what I realized during lockdown, is every day we go to work or every day we communicate with people, right? We don't realize these conversations and their language and their influences can bring our mindset levels down. You know, and I realized being by myself during lockdown, especially like a lot of people went through depression during lockdown, you know, so I think this example is going to be super relevant, is when I went through lockdown by myself, right? I realized the energy levels I can bring out just being in my environment without other external forces bringing my energy levels down, you know, and I struggled with my mental health every day is because I didn't like the environment, or I didn't like going to work, or, you know, I didn't like this, I didn't like that. You know, a lot of people sit on the train and don't like it, you know, sit on the bus, don't like it, you know, and they straight away get into a bad mindset, you know, and I think being aware of your environment can make a huge difference to being aware of your mental health awareness and being aware of how you're feeling. You know, and I'll give you another example. You know, when I used to catch the train every morning, I used to sit on the train, right? And I used to see people just looking really, really sad on the train. And I used to be like, why are these guys so sad? You know, and like some people, like I said, must be hating their jobs. They might be having trouble at home. They might not have a father figure, a mother figure, you know? But I promise you, if it's hard right now, you can break through. And I need everybody to remember that's listening, is everybody loves a comeback story. You know, no one likes listening to a story that doesn't have a comeback story. It's never going to sell. So if you're feeling like your story is the hardest at the moment and you feel like just ending it, you need to trust me that the world needs your story. Because if we don't have your story, the world will stop moving. You know, no one likes reading a story that's not a comeback story. If you've got 4 comeback stories in your life or 1 million comeback stories, it's better than not having any comeback stories. I promise you that. So that's my advice to combating mental health. And I think it's literally just making sure that it's okay to not be happy every day.
Because I really like that.
It's real good, eh? And I think also what I wanted to add to that is, what I do consistently every day is, I talked about this actually like 2 days ago with one of my best friends. And, I said that, hey, look, you know, it's crazy that embracing the darkest days in our lives has given us so much more opportunity in life. Because if you don't have the darkest days, where are you ever going to get any inspiration from? You know, that's what people forget about when they get into these headspaces. It's because, oh my God, if life was great, you're never going to get any inspiration. You know,
why would you change it?
Why would you change it? Exactly. So I think embracing your darkest moments in your mind will help you bring about change and become a true change maker, not even in your mind, but for the rest of the world.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Nayzel, for joining us today. How can the listeners find you? Let us know. And do you have any cool projects coming up and all of that jazz?
Yeah. You can follow me on my Instagram, which is pretty simple. It's Nayz versus Wild. Nayz. Or is it Nayz versus Wild? So it's kind
of like my American listeners, Z is Z.
Yeah, that's it. Follow me on that. Follow my company page, which is Feature New Zealand. And then we've got, if you just go onto that page, it's got links to every other thing that I work with anyways, like the Beowulf project and things like that. So if you go on that page, you'll find everything. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And all the links and everything will be in the description as well. Well, thank you so much, Nayzel. I really appreciate it. And I hope to have you on the podcast again soon, because this was a great conversation. I feel actually very inspired. I don't know how I'm going to sleep later.
That's so good. I'm glad.
I got to go out there and make some change, man.
No, I'm glad. Thanks for having me, honestly.
Yeah. And also, congratulations on your collection launch. You launched it this past Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
I was pretty stoked with it. So it's still going. So we won't give up. You know, it's an ever-ending game, but we're going to keep going until the end. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Awesome. And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you guys found it as inspiring as I did. And if you haven't already, don't forget to follow this podcast so you never miss a new episode, and rate it on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, because it helps people find the show and we can continue to have these conversations. If you have a project that you're working on that you really feel is benefiting your community, send me a message on Instagram at Earth's Narrative and let's write this narrative together. New episodes out every Monday, available wherever you find podcasts, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.